The shattered mirror reflected more than just my bloodied face. It showed the wild desperation in Adam's eyes as he whispered, "I'm doing this for her, Josh. For us." My mind raced with questions I couldn't piece together. How did we get here? What had I missed? And why was Sarah's engagement ring clutched in his hand like a trophy? Started with a phone call, like most things did. Adam's name lit up my screen just as I was pulling into my driveway after a long day at work. His voice carried the same half-cheerful, half-awkward tone he always used when asking for something. "Hey man, you got a minute?" "Yeah, what's up?" I said, juggling my keys and a paper bag of groceries. "Thinking we should catch up. How about tonight? I can swing by." It had been a couple of weeks since we'd hung out, which was unusual for us. Adam had been my best friend since second grade. He was the quiet, cerebral kid with a knack for solving puzzles, and I was the talkative one who always got us into trouble. We balanced each other out in ways that seemed natural then. But lately, something about Adam felt off. He'd started pulling away after I got engaged to Sarah last year. The three of us used to be inseparable, but Adam had grown distant. I'd written it off as nerves about the future. After all, big changes can be unsettling. Still, I missed him. "Sure," I said. "Come by around 8? By the time Adam arrived, Sarah was already upstairs, reading before bed. He stepped into the living room, looking disheveled but trying to appear casual. His clothes were rumpled, his sneakers worn to the soles. "Beer?" I asked, heading to the kitchen. "Yeah, thanks," he said, plopping down on the couch and scanning the room like he was taking inventory. We talked about work, old memories, and random nonsense, but it felt forced. His laughter didn't quite reach his eyes, and there was an edge to his voice that made me uneasy. Finally, as I was mid-sentence about a work meeting gone wrong, Adam interrupted. "So, how's Sarah?" The question was innocuous enough, but there was a sharpness to it. "She's good," I said, treading lightly. "Busy with wedding planning. You know how it is." He nodded, staring at his beer. "You're lucky, man. She's something special." Something in his tone made me pause. "She is," I said slowly. "We're both lucky." Adam's eyes flicked to mine, then back to his beer. "Do you ever wonder if—" He stopped himself and shook his head. "Wonder what?" "Nothing. Forget it." The moment hung in the air, heavy and strange. Before I could press him, Adam downed the rest of his beer and stood. "Anyway, I should get going. Long day tomorrow." I wanted to ask him to stay, to explain whatever was on his mind, but something told me not to. A week later, Sarah received the first letter. It was a Wednesday night, and we were eating takeout on the couch. She opened the envelope with a curious smile, but as her eyes scanned the page, her face hardened. "What is it?" I asked. She handed it to me without a word. The letter was typed, and signed, and brief. "You deserve the truth. Josh isn't who you think he is." "That's it," I said, flipping the page over. Sarah nodded, biting her lip. "What do you think it means?" "No idea," I said, though a creeping unease settled in my chest. "Probably some prank. I mean, it's vague enough to mean nothing, right?" "Maybe," she said, but her voice was distant. I tried to laugh it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the letter wasn't random. Over the next few days, Sarah received 3 more letters. Each was similarly cryptic, dropping vague accusations without any specifics. I tried to convince her, and myself, that it was just a prank, but Sarah grew quieter with each note. By the 4th letter, I couldn't ignore the feeling anymore. A month later, things came to a head. Sarah and I were at Adam's apartment for what was supposed to be a casual dinner. I hadn't told him about the letters, though the thought had crossed my mind. Something about his erratic behavior made me wary. The evening started off fine, with Adam making jokes and Sarah laughing along, but tension simmered beneath the surface. I could see it in the way Adam's eyes lingered on her, the way he seemed to bristle when I touched her arm. At one point, Sarah excused herself to the bathroom, leaving Adam and me alone. He leaned back in his chair, swirling his drink. "You ever think about how people don't always end up with who they're meant to be with?" What are you talking about? I asked, though I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Adam shrugged. Just, life's funny like that. Timing, circumstances, sometimes it screws everything up. I stared at him, my patience wearing thin. Are you trying to say something? Before he could answer, Sarah returned, and the moment passed. But later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, she turned to me with a strange expression. Josh, she said, her voice trembling. I think Adam's been sending the letters. Her words hit me like a gut punch, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Her words hit me like a gut punch, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. That doesn't make any sense, I said, though even as the words left my mouth, doubt crept in. Why would Adam do something like that? Sarah hesitated, her hands clenched around the edge of the blanket. I don't know. But tonight, I caught him looking at me. At us like, she trailed off, her face pale. Like he hates you, Josh. And me too, in a way. It was unsettling. I wanted to dismiss her concerns, to tell her she was overreacting. But the truth was, Adam's behavior had been strange for months. His cryptic comments, the tension between us. It all pointed to something I couldn't ignore anymore. I'll talk to him, I said finally, though the thought of confronting Adam made my stomach churn. Sarah reached for my hand. Be careful. The next day, I left work early and drove to Adam's place. The sun hung low in the sky, casting the apartment building in deep orange hues, but the warmth did nothing to calm my nerves. When Adam opened the door, he looked surprised to see me, but he stepped aside and let me in without a word. The apartment was dim, cluttered with half-empty beer bottles and stacks of unopened mail. What's going on? Adam asked, slumping onto the couch. I didn't sit. Instead, I crossed my arms and stood in the center of the room, trying to steel myself. I need to know if you've been sending Sarah letters. His reaction was immediate. His body stiffened, and his eyes darted away. What the hell are you talking about? Don't lie to me, Adam, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. She thinks it's you. And honestly, I don't know what to believe anymore. Adam's jaw tightened, and for a moment, he didn't speak. Then he laughed. A short, bitter sound. So she's got you convinced now too, huh? This isn't a joke, I snapped. If you're behind this, I need to know why. Adam stood abruptly, knocking over an empty beer bottle that clattered to the floor. You think I'd do something like that? To you? I don't know what to think, I admitted. But you've been acting strange, distant. And the way you look at Sarah. He let out a harsh breath, running his hands through his hair. This is insane. Do you even hear yourself? Then explain it to me, I shouted. Help me understand, because right now, none of this makes sense. Adam stared at me, his expression torn between anger and something else, something darker. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I'm not sending letters, he said finally, his voice low. But if you're so convinced I'm the bad guy, maybe I should be. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I wanted to press him further, to demand answers, but the look in his eyes stopped me. There was something unhinged about it, something that made my skin crawl. I left without saying another word. That night I barely slept. Sarah's concerns, Adam's cryptic responses. It all swirled in my mind like a storm. By morning, I was no closer to understanding what was happening, but I knew I couldn't let it fester any longer. As I got ready for work, my phone buzzed with a text from my boss, Mr. Klein. Need to see you in my office ASAP. I arrived at the office to find Klein pacing behind his desk, his face lined with frustration. He gestured for me to sit, but I stayed standing. What's going on? I asked. He threw a manila folder onto the desk. This is going on. I opened the folder to find copies of emails, personal ones, written by me to Sarah, venting about work, Klein, and the unbearable stress of the job. These were sent to HR, Klein said, his voice tight, from an anonymous source. My stomach dropped. I didn't send these. I know you didn't, he said, his eyes narrowing. But someone did. and they were copied to every department head. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? No, I said, though my mind was already racing. Adam. It had to be Adam. Klein sighed and rubbed his temples. Look, I'm putting out the fire, but this isn't going away quietly. I need you to figure out who's behind this or your reputation and mine is toast. I nodded numbly, clutching the folder as I left the office. That evening, I sat in the car outside Adam's building, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The emails were just another layer of betrayal, another step in a game I didn't fully understand. But when I went inside, Adam wasn't there. His apartment was dark, the door slightly ajar. I hesitated before stepping in, my pulse racing. The living room was eerily quiet, the faint smell of stale beer lingering in the air. On the coffee table was a crumpled piece of paper, scribbled with messy handwriting. She's lying to you, Josh. She always has. My heart pounded as I scanned the rest of the apartment, but Adam was gone. And so was Sarah's engagement ring. My head spun as I stared at the crumpled note. Adam was unraveling, but the question that haunted me was why. The ring, Sarah's engagement ring, wasn't just a symbol of my love for her. It was a part of her, a part of us. And now Adam had it. I left the apartment in a daze, dialing Sarah as I climbed into my car. She answered after the third ring, her voice tight. Josh? What's going on? Adam's gone, I said. And your ring, it's missing. What? She whispered. Why would he? I don't know, but something's not right. I found a note. He says you're lying to me. There was silence on the line, a pause that stretched too long. Josh, what is it? My grip tightened on the wheel. There's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know how, and I thought it wouldn't matter anymore, but Adam and I, she choked on the words. Years ago, before you and I were serious, we kissed. The ground beneath me seemed to shift. What? It was nothing, Josh. He kissed me and I stopped it immediately. I never wanted to hurt you, so I didn't say anything. But I think he's been holding on to it ever since. I couldn't respond. My mind was a tangle of disbelief and anger, but most of all, guilt. Guilt for not seeing how deeply Adam had buried himself in this obsession. Where are you now? I asked finally. I'm at home, she said. I thought you were coming back after work. Stay there. Lock the doors. I'll be back soon. I drove aimlessly for an hour, hoping for clarity that never came. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, breaking my trance. It was a text from Adam. Meet me at the old bridge. We need to talk. The old bridge. The place where Adam and I used to hang out as kids. A crumbling structure on the outskirts of town. A place we hadn't been in years. Every instinct told me to call the police, but something about the message felt final, like a reckoning. Against my better judgment, I drove to the bridge. The sun had dipped below the horizon by the time I arrived, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. Adam stood at the edge of the bridge, silhouetted against the twilight. In his hand, I saw the glint of Sarah's ring. Adam, I called out, stepping cautiously onto the creaking wooden planks. He turned slowly, his face pale and drawn. There was a wildness in his eyes, a volatile mix of pain and fury. You came, he said, his voice hollow. Give me the ring, I said, keeping my tone steady. This has gone far enough. Adam laughed bitterly. Far enough? You don't even know how far this goes, Josh. Then tell me, I said, stepping closer. Help me understand. He clenched his fists, his body trembling. It's always been you. You get everything I've ever wanted. And you don't even see it, do you? This isn't about Sarah, I said, the realization dawning on me. This is about us. Adam's eyes glistened with unshed tears. You were my best friend, the one person who was supposed to care. And then she came along, and suddenly, I was invisible. You were never invisible, I said, my voice breaking. You're my brother in every way that matters, Adam. But this isn't the way to fix things. He shook his head, his grip tightening on the ring. You don't get it. She deserves better. She deserves someone who actually sees her. Who? She loves me, I interrupted. And I love her. But that doesn't mean I stopped caring about you. Adam's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him. For a moment, I thought I'd reached him. But then he looked at the ring in his hand and took a step closer to the edge. Adam, don't, I said, my heart pounding. He looked up at me, his expression a mix of despair and resignation. You were always the better one, Josh. I see that now. Before I could move, he tossed the ring into the river below. The sound of it hitting the water was deafening in the silence that followed. No! I shouted, running to the edge. When I turned back, Adam was on his knees, sobbing. The aftermath was a blur. The police arrived, and Adam was taken into custody for trespassing and theft. I stayed on the bridge long after they left, staring at the dark water below. When I returned home, Sarah was waiting for me, her eyes red from crying. I told her everything, and together, we mourned the loss of a friendship that had once meant everything. Months later, I visited Adam in the mental health facility where he'd been placed. He looked healthier, more like the boy I'd grown up with. I'm sorry, he said, his voice small. I know, I said, sitting across from him. And I forgive you. We talked for hours about the past, about where things went wrong. But as I left, I couldn't help feeling that some wounds might never fully heal. As for Sarah and me, we moved forward, but not without scars. The ring was never recovered, but we bought a new one. Something simple, something ours. Life went on, imperfect and fragile, but ours to rebuild. And though the pain of that night lingered, it reminded me of the cost of love and the strength it takes to hold on to it. Appreciate your time. Could you see the twist coming? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like for more.